Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, where we get to know Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, more and more and more as we go through the Bhagavatam until we finally meet him in his original form face to face. So we're in the 5th canto now of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. We got Bhakta Oscar. He just showed up, friend of Hannah's, and inquisitive young lad. Let's see what happens. Okay, Srila Sanatana Goswami wrote a very beautiful prayer glorifying the Srimad-Bhagavatam, the book that we're about to read. And if you listen very carefully, at least the English, you may not understand the Sanskrit, at least right away. Right. Take your little time. Then it'll explain to you what the Bhagavatam is. Okay? Srimad-Bhagavata Mahima Stotram, it goes like this. Sarva Shastra Lipiyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwan Doditaditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life heir of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshaksharaya Te Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you who were supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madhika Bando Matsangin Madgudo Mad Mahadana Mandistadaga Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadhu tadayin atini chuchata kara anamuncha gadachin mam premna ritkanta yospuda. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, Maharaja Priyavrata has been convinced to come down from the mountain where he was living as a renunciate under the guidance of Narada Muni, that great liberated soul. And it took Lord Brahma, Swayambhu Manu, and others to convince Priyavrata to give up the renounced order of life and take up the rulership of the universe. And now we're starting to hear about his adventure, starting with text 23, Canto 5, Chapter 1. Following the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Maharaj Priyavrata fully engaged in worldly affairs, yet he always thought of the lotus feet of the Lord, which are the cause of liberation from all material attachment. Although Priyavrata Maharaj was completely freed from all material contamination, he ruled the material world just to honor the orders of his superiors. Purport. The words Manavardhano Mahatam, just to show honor to superiors, are very significant. Although Maharaj Priyavrata was already a liberated person and had no attraction for material things, he engaged himself fully in governmental affairs just to show respect to Lord Brahma. Arjuna acted in the same way. He had no desire to participate in political affairs or the fighting at Kurukshetra, but when ordered to do so by the Supreme Lord, Krishna, he executed those duties very nicely. One who always thinks of the lotus feet of the Lord is certainly above all the contamination of the material world. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Yoginam apisarvesham madkatenan tadatmana shadhavan bhajate yomam same yuktatamo mataha. Of all yogis, he who always abides in me with great faith, worshipping me in transcendental loving service, is most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. Bhagavad Gita 6:47. Maharaj Priyavrata, therefore, was a liberated person and was among the highest of yogis, yet superficially he became the emperor of the universe in accordance with the order of Lord Brahma. Showing respect to his superior in this way was another of his extraordinary qualifications. As stated in Srimad-Bhagavatam 6:17-28, Narayana parak sarve na kutas chadabhibyati swarga pavarga narakeshu apitul yartadarshinaha. A devotee who is actually advanced is not afraid of anything. Hare Krishna, Hare Bo. Provided B has the opportunity. Where do you have it there? Tell me. Yes, do you have he in the book? Okay, it's just a glitch in the program.
I have B on here.
You have B also? Yeah, it's in the database.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have he on the database.
You have he?
Yes.
Okay. I have to let Dravida know about this, because I have the latest. This is the latest one.
You forgot something.
Oh. I don't deserve it, but I'll take it anyway. Hare Krishna. Now I lost my place. Darn it.
Text from here.
Text
Bottom of the report.
23, bottom of the purport. Yes, got it. I'm just going to highlight it so I won't forget. Don't mind. Okay. A devotee who is actually advanced is not afraid of anything, provided he has the opportunity to execute the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the proper explanation of why Priyavrata engaged in worldly affairs, although he was a liberated person. Also, only because of this principle does a Mahabhagavat, who has nothing to do with the material world, come down to the second platform of devotional service to preach the glories of the Lord all over the world. Text 24. Thereafter, Maharaj Priyavrata married Barhishmati, the daughter of the Prajapati named Vishwakarma. In her he begot 10 sons equal to him in beauty, character, magnanimity, and other qualities. He also begot a daughter, the youngest of all, named Urjasvati. Purport. Maharaj Priyavrata not only carried out the order of Lord Brahma by accepting the duties of government, but he also married Barhishmati, the daughter of Vishwakarma, one of the Prajapatis. Since Maharaj Priyavrata was fully trained in transcendental knowledge, he could have returned home and conducted the business of government as a brahmachari. Instead, however, when he returned to household life, he accepted a wife also. The principle is that when one becomes a grihastha, he must live perfectly in that order, which means he must live peacefully with a wife and children. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's first wife died, his mother requested him to marry for a second time. He was 20 years old and was going to take sannyas at the age of 24. Yet by the request of his mother, he married. As long as I am in household life, he told his mother, I must have a wife. For household life does not mean staying in a house. Real household life means living in a house with a wife. 3 words in this verse are very significant. Uha vaba. These words are used to express wonder. Priyavrata Maharaj had taken a vow of renunciation, but accepting a wife and begetting children have nothing to do with the path of renunciation. These are activities on the path of enjoyment. It was a great source of wonder, therefore, that Priyavrata Maharaj, who had followed the path of renunciation, had now accepted the path of enjoyment. Sometimes we are criticized because although I am a sannyasi, I have taken part in the marriage ceremonies of my disciples. It must be explained, however, that since we have started a Krishna-conscious society, and since a human society must also have ideal marriages, to correctly establish an ideal society, we must take part in marrying some of its members, although we have taken to the path of renunciation. This may be astonishing to persons who are not very interested in establishing Daiva Varnashram, the transcendental system of 4 social orders and 4 spiritual orders. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, however, wanted to re-establish Daiva Varnashram. In Daiva Varnashram, there cannot be acknowledgement of social status according to birthright, because in the Bhagavad Gita it is said that the determining considerations are guna and karma, one's qualities and work. It is this Daiva Varnashrama that should be established all over the world to continue a perfect society for Krishna consciousness. This may be astonishing to foolish critics, but it is one of the functions of a Krishna conscious society. Text 25. The 10 sons of Maharaj Priyavrata were named Agnidra, Idmajiva, Yagyabahu, Mahavira, Hiranyareta, Gritaprishta, Savana, Medatiti, Vitihotra, and Kavi. These are also names of Agni, the fire god. Text 26. 3 among these 10, namely Kavi, Mahavira, and Savana, lived in complete celibacy. Thus trained in brahmachari life from the beginning of childhood, they were very conversant with the highest perfection, known as the Paramahansa ashram. Purport. The word Urdhva Retasa in this verse is very significant. Urdhva Reta refers to one who can control sex life and who, instead of wasting semen by discharging it, can use this most important substance accumulated in the body to enrich the brain. One who can completely control sex life is able to work wonderfully with his brain, especially in remembering. Thus, students who simply hear Vedic instructions once from the teacher, Hare Krishna, could remember them verbatim without needing to read books, which therefore did not exist in former times. Another significant word is Arba Bhavat, which means from very childhood. Another meaning is from being very affectionate to children. In other words, Paramahansa life is dedicated for the benefit of others. Just as a father sacrifices many things out of affection for his son, great saintly persons sacrifice all kinds of bodily comforts for the benefit of human society. In this connection, there is a verse concerning the 6 Goswamis. Tyaktva Turna Mashesha Mandalapati Shrenim Siddhatuchjavat Bhutva Dina Ganesha Kau Karuniya Kaupina Kanta Shritao. Because of their compassion for the poor fallen souls, the 6 Goswamis gave up their exalted positions as ministers and took vows as mendicants. Thus, minimizing their bodily wants as far as possible, they each accepted only a loincloth and a begging bowl. Thus they remained in Vrindavan to execute the orders of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by compiling and publishing various Vaishnava literatures. Text 27. Thus situated in the renounced order from the beginning of their lives, all 3 of them completely controlled the activities of their senses and thus became great saints. They concentrated their minds always upon the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the resting place of the totality of living entities, and who is therefore celebrated as Vasudeva. Lord Vasudeva is the only shelter of those who are actually afraid of material existence. By constantly thinking of his lotus feet, these 3 sons of Maharaja Priyavrata became advanced in pure devotional service. By the prowess of their devotional service, they could directly perceive the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in everyone's heart as the Supersoul, and realize that there was qualitatively no difference between themselves and him. Haribol, Hare Krishna. Purport. The Paramahansa stage is the topmost position in renounced life. In sannyas, the renounced order, there are 4 stages: Kutijak, Bahudak, Paribrajacacharya, and Paramahansa. According to the Vedic system, when one accepts the renounced order, he stays outside his village in a cottage, and his necessities, especially his food, are supplied from home. This is called the Kutichak stage. When a sannyasi advances further, he no longer accepts anything from home. Instead, he collects his necessities, especially his food, from many places. This system is called Madhukari, which literally means the profession of the bumblebees. As bumblebees collect honey from many flowers, a little from each, so a sannyasi should beg from door to door, but not accept very much food from a particular house. He should collect a little bit from every house. This is called the Bahudak stage. When a sannyasi is still more experienced, he travels all over the world to preach the glories of Lord Vasudeva. He is then known as Parivrajacacharya. The sannyasi reaches the Paramahansa stage when he finishes his preaching work and sits down in one place, strictly for the sake of advancement in spiritual life. An actual Paramahansa is one who completely controls his senses and engages in the unalloyed service of the Lord. Therefore, all 3 of these sons of Priyavrata, named Kavi, Mahavira, and Savana, were situated in the Paramahansa stage from the very beginning. Their senses could not disturb them, for their senses were completely engaged in serving the Lord. Therefore, the 3 brothers who are described in this verse as Upashama Shila. Upashama means completely subdued. Because they completely subdued their senses, they are understood to have been great sages and saints. After subduing their senses, the 3 brothers concentrated their minds upon the lotus feet of Vasudeva, Lord Krishna. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 7:19, Vasudeva Sarvamiti. The lotus feet of Vasudeva are everything. Lord Vasudeva is the reservoir of all living entities. When this cosmic manifestation is dissolved, all living entities enter the supreme body of the Lord, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, who merges within the body of Mahavishnu. Both of these Vishnu Tattvas are Vasudeva Tattvas, and therefore the great sages, Kavi, Mahavira, and Savana, concentrated always upon the lotus feet of Lord Vasudeva, Krishna. In this way they could understand that the Supersoul within the heart is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they could recognize their identity with Him. The complete description of this realization is that simply by discharging the unalloyed form of devotional service, one can realize his self completely. The Parama Bhakti Yoga mentioned in this verse means that a living entity, by dint of unalloyed devotional service, has no other interest than the service of the Lord. As described in Bhagavad Gita, Vasudeva Sarvam Iti. By Parama Bhakti Yoga, by elevating oneself to the highest platform of loving service, one can automatically be relieved from the bodily concept of life and see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face, as confirmed in Brahma Samhita. Premanjanat Churita Bhakti Bilochanena Santak Sadaiva Rijayeshu Bilokayanti Yam Sham Masundara Machintya Gunasa Rupam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. An advanced devotee who is known as a sat or saint can always see within his heart the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. Krishna, Shyamasundar, expands himself by his plenary portion, and thus a devotee can always see him within his heart. Text 28. In his other wife, Maharaja Priyavrata begot 3 sons, named Uttama, Tamasa, and Raivata. All of them later took charge of Manvantara millenniums. Purport. In every day of Brahma, there are 14 Manvantaras. The duration of one Manvantara, the lifespan of one Manu, is 71 yugas, and each yuga is 4,320,000 years. Almost all the Manus selected to rule the Manvantaras came from the family of Maharaja Priyavrata. 3 of them are particularly mentioned herein, namely Uttama, Tamasa, and Raivata. Text 29. After Kavi, Mahavira and Savana were completely trained in the Paramahansa stage of life, Maharaj Priyavrata ruled the universe for 11 arbudas of years. Whenever he was determined to fix his arrow upon his bowstring with his 2 powerful arms, all opponents of the regulative principles of religious life would flee from his presence in fear of the unparalleled prowess he displayed in ruling the universe. He greatly loved his wife Barishmati, and with the increase of days, their exchange of nuptial love also increased. By her feminine behavior, as she dressed herself, walked, got up, smiled, laughed, and glanced about, Queen Barishmati increased his energy. Thus, although he was a great soul, he appeared lost in the feminine conduct of his wife. He behaved with her just like an ordinary man, but actually, he was a great soul. Purport. In this verse, the word dharma pratipaksha, opponents of religion, opponents of religious principles, refers not to a particular faith, but to varnashram dharma, the division of society, socially and spiritually, into 4 varnas: Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, and 4 ashramas: Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas. To maintain proper social order and to help the citizens gradually progress toward the goal of life, namely spiritual understanding, the principles of Varnashram Dharma must be accepted. From this verse, Maharaj Priyavrata appears to have been so strict in maintaining this institution of Varnashram Dharma that anyone neglecting it would immediately flee from his presence as soon as the king warned him by fighting or administering light punishment. Indeed, Maharaj Priyavrata would not have to fight, for simply because of his strong determination, they dared not disobey the rules and regulations of Varnashram Dharma. It is said that unless human society is regulated by Varnashram Dharma, it is no better than a bestial society of cats and dogs. Maharaj Priyavrata therefore strictly maintained Varnashram Dharma by his extraordinary, unparalleled prowess. Haribol Sarva. To maintain such a life of strict vigilance, one needs encouragement from his wife. In the Varnashram Dharma system, certain classes, such as the Brahmanas and Sannyasis, do not need encouragement from the opposite sex. Kshatriyas and Grihasthas, however, actually need the encouragement of their wives in order to execute their duties. Indeed, a Grihastha or Kshatriya cannot properly execute his responsibilities without the association of his wife. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally admitted that a Grihastha must live with a wife. Kshatriyas were even allowed to have many wives to encourage them in discharging the duties of government. The association of a good wife is necessary in a life of karma and political affairs. To execute his duties properly, therefore, Maharaj Priyavrata took advantage of his good wife, Barishmati, who was always very expert in pleasing her great husband by properly dressing herself, smiling, and exhibiting her feminine bodily features. Queen Barishmati always kept Maharaj Priyavrata very encouraged, and thus he executed his governmental duty very properly. In this verse, Iba has twice been used to indicate that Maharaj Priyavrata acted exactly like a hand-picked husband, and thereby seemed to have lost his sense of human responsibility. Actually, however, he was fully conscious of his position as a spirit soul, although he seemingly behaved like an acquiescent karmi husband. Maharaj Priyavrata thus ruled the universe for 11 arbudas of years. One arbuda consists of 100 million years. 1100 million years. And Maharaj Priyavrata ruled the universe for 11 such arbudas. Obviously this was a long time ago. Beginning of the universe. Text 30. While so excellently ruling the universe, King Priyavrata once became dissatisfied with the circumambulation of the most powerful sun god. Encircling Sumeru hill on his chariot, the sun god illuminates all the surrounding planetary systems. However, when the sun is on the northern side of the hill, the south receives less light, and when the sun is in the south, the north receives less. King Priyavrata disliked this situation and therefore decided to make daylight in the part of the universe where there was night. He followed the orbit of the sun god on a brilliant chariot and thus fulfilled his desire. He could perform such wonderful activities because of the power he had achieved by worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. There's a Bengali saying which describes that someone is so powerful that he can make the night day and the day night. That saying is current because of the prowess of Priyavrata. His activities demonstrate how powerful he became by worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Krishna is known as Yogeshwar, the master of all mystic powers. In Bhagavad Gita 1878, it is said, wherever there is the master of all mystic powers, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, victory, fortune, and all other opulences are present. Devotional service is so powerful. When a devotee achieves what he wants to accomplish, it is not by his own mystic power, but by the grace of the master of mystic power, Lord Krishna. By his grace, a devotee can accomplish wonderful things, unimaginable even to the most powerful scientist. From the description of this verse, it appears that the sun moves. According to modern astronomers, the sun is fixed in one place, surrounded by the solar system. But here we find that the sun is not stationary, it is rotating in a prescribed orbit. This fact is corroborated by Brahma Samhita 552. Yasyag Brahmatisam Britakala Chakra. The sun is rotating in its fixed orbit in accordance with the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. According to Jyotirveda, the science of astronomy, in the Vedic literature, the sun moves for 6 months on the northern side of the Sumera hill and for 6 months on the southern side. We have practical experience on this planet that when there is summer in the north, there is winter in the south, and vice versa. Modern materialistic scientists sometimes present themselves as knowing all the ingredients of the sun, yet they are unable to offer a second sun, like Maharaja Priyavrata. Although Maharaja Priyavrata devised a very powerful chariot as brilliant as the sun, he had no desire to compete with the sun god, for a Vaishnava never wants to supersede another Vaishnava. I'll repeat that. For a Vaishnava never wants to supersede another Vaishnava. His purpose was to give abundant benefits in material existence. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur remarks that in the months of April and May, the rays of Maharaj Priyavrata's brilliant sun were as pleasing as the rays of the moon, and in October and November, both morning and evening, that sun provided more warmth than the sunshine. In short, Maharaj Priyavrata was extremely powerful, and his actions extended his power in all directions. Text 31. When Priyavrata drove his chariot behind the sun, the rims of his chariot wheels created impressions that later became 7 oceans, dividing the planetary system known as Bhumandala into 7 islands. Purport. Sometimes the planets in outer space are called islands. We have experience of various types of islands in the ocean, and similarly, the various planets divided into 14 lokas are islands in the ocean of space. As Priyavrata drove his chariot behind the sun, he created 7 different types of oceans and planetary systems, which all together are known as Bhumandala or Bhuloka. In the Gayatri Mantra we chant Om Bhur Bhuvak Swa Tat Savitur Varenyam. Above the Bhurloka planetary system is Bhuvarloka, and above that is Swargaloka, the heavenly planetary system. All these planetary systems are controlled by Savita, the sun god. By chanting the Gayatri Mantra just after rising early in the morning, one worships the sun god. Text 32. The names of the islands are Jambu, Plaksha, Shalmali, Kusha, Krauncha, Shaka, and Pushkara. Each island is twice as large as the one preceding it, and each is surrounded by a liquid substance. Beyond which is the next island. Purport. The ocean in each planetary system has a different type of liquid. How they are situated is explained in the next verse. Text 33. The 7 oceans respectively contain salt water, sugarcane juice, liquor, clarified butter, milk, emulsified yogurt, and sweet drinking water. All the islands are completely surrounded by these oceans, and each ocean is equal in breadth to the island it surrounds. Maharaj Priyavrata, the husband of Queen Barishmati, gave sovereignty over these islands to his respective sons, namely Agnidra, Idmajiva, Yagyabahu, Hiranyareta, Grita Prishta, Medatiti, and Vitihotra. Thus they all became kings by the order of their father. Purport. It is to be understood that all the dvipas or islands are surrounded by different types of oceans, and it is said herein that the breadth of each ocean is the same as that of the island it surrounds. The length of the oceans, however, cannot equal the length of the islands. According to Viraragava Acharya, the breadth of the first island is 100,000 yojanas. 1 yojana equals 8 miles, and therefore the breadth of the first island is calculated to be 800,000 miles. The waters surrounding it must have been the same breadth, but its length must be different. Text 34. King Priyavrata then gave his daughter Urjavasvati in marriage to Shukracharya, who begot in her a daughter named Devayani. Text 35. My dear king, a devotee who has taken shelter of the dust from the lotus feet of the Lord can transcend the influence of the 6 material waves, namely hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, old age, and death. And he can conquer the mind and 5 senses. However, this is not very wonderful for a pure devotee of the Lord, because even a person beyond the jurisdiction of the 4 castes, in other words, the untouchable, is immediately relieved of bondage to material existence if he utters the holy name of the Lord even once. Purport. Shukadeva Goswami was speaking to Maharaj Parikshit about the activities of King Priyavrata, and since the king might have had doubts about these wonderful, uncommon activities, Shukadeva Goswami reassured him. My dear king, he said, don't be doubtful about the wonderful activities of Priyavrata. For a devotee, Hare Krishna. For a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything is possible, because the Lord is also known as Urukrama. Urukrama is a name for Lord Vamanadev, who performed the wonderful act of occupying the 3 worlds with 3 footsteps. Lord Vamanadev requested 3 paces of land from Maharaj Bali, and when Maharaj Bali agreed to grant them, the Lord immediately covered the entire world with 2 footsteps, and for his 3rd step, he placed his foot upon Bali Maharaj's head. Sri Jayadev Goswami says, Chalayasi Vikramani Balim Adbhuta Vamana Paranaka Nira Janiti Jana Pavana Keshavadrita Vamana Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare. All glories to Lord Keshava, who assumed the form of a dwarf. O Lord of the universe, who take away everything inauspicious for the devotees. O wonderful Vamanadev, you tricked the great demon Bali Maharaj by your steps. The water that touched the nails of your lotus feet when you pierced through the covering of the universe purified all living entities in the form of the river Ganges. Since the Supreme Lord is all-powerful, he can do things that seem wonderful for a common man. Similarly, a devotee who has taken shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord can also do wonderful things unimaginable to a common man. By the grace of the dust of those lotus feet, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore teaches us to take shelter of the Lord's lotus feet. Ainanda tanuja kinkaram patitam mam vishame bhavam buddho kripaya tavapada pankaja stitaduli sadrisham pachintaya. O son of Nanda Maharaj, I am your eternal servant, yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms of your lotus feet. Lord Chaitanya teaches us to come in touch with the dust of the Lord's lotus feet, for then there will undoubtedly be all success. Because of the material body, every living entity in material existence is always disturbed by Shadguna, 6 waves: hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, invalidity, and death. Furthermore, another Shadguna are the mind and 5 sense organs. Not to speak of a sanctified devotee, even a Chandala, an outcast who is untouchable, is immediately freed from material bondage if he utters the holy name of the Lord even once. Sometimes caste brahmanas argue that unless one changes his body, he cannot be accepted as a brahmana. For since the present body is obtained as a result of past actions, one who has in the past acted as a brahmana takes birth in a brahmana family. Therefore they contend, without such a brahminical body, one cannot be accepted as a brahmana. Herein it is said, however, that even a Vidura Vigata, a Chandala, a 5th class untouchable, is freed if he utters the holy name even once. Being freed means that he immediately changes his body. Sanatana Goswami confirms this. Yata kanchanatang yati kangsyam rasa vidanataha tata diksha vidanena dvijatvam jayate nrinam. Hari Bhakti Vilas 2:12. When a person, even though a Chandala, is initiated by a pure devotee into chanting of the holy name of the Lord, his body changes as he follows the instructions of the spiritual master. Although one cannot see how his body is changed, we must accept on the grounds of the authoritative statements of the Shastras that he changes his body. This is to be understood without arguments. This verse clearly says, Sa jahati bandham, he gives up his material bondage. The body is a symbolic representation of material bondage according to one's karma. Although sometimes we cannot see the gross body changing, chanting the holy name of the Supreme Lord immediately changes the subtle body. And because the subtle body changes, the living entity is immediately freed from material bondage. After all, changes of the gross body are conducted by the subtle body. After the destruction of the gross body, the subtle body takes the living entity from the present gross body to another. In the subtle body, the mind is prominent, and therefore if one's mind is always absorbed in remembering the activities or the lotus feet of the Lord, he is to be understood to have already changed his present body and become purified. Therefore it is irrefutable that a Chandala or any fallen or lower-born person can become a Brahmana simply by the method of bona fide initiation. Text 36. While enjoying his material opulences with full strength and influence, Maharaja Priyavrata once began to consider that although he had fully surrendered to the great saint Narada and was actually on the path of Krishna consciousness, he had somehow become again entangled in material activities. Thus his mind now became restless, and he began to speak in a spirit of renunciation. Purport. In Srimad-Bhagavatam 1.5.17 it is said, Tyaktva swadharmam charanam bhajem harer bhajan apakwo tapatet tato yadi yatra kova bhadramabhut amushakim kovarta apto bhajatam swadharmataha. One who has forsaken his material occupations to engage in the devotional service of the Lord may sometimes fall down while in an immature stage, yet there is no danger of his being unsuccessful. On the other hand, a non-devotee, though fully engaged in occupational duties, does not gain anything. If one somehow or other comes to the shelter of a great Vaishnava, takes to Krishna consciousness, because of sentiment or realization, but in course of time falls down because of immature understanding, he is not actually fallen. For his having engaged in Krishna consciousness is a permanent asset. If one falls down, therefore, his progress might be checked for a certain time, but it will again become manifest at an opportune moment. Although Priyavrata Maharaj was serving according to the instructions of Narada Muni meant for going back home, back to Godhead, he returned to material affairs at the request of his father. In due course of time, however, his consciousness for serving Krishna reawakened by the grace of his spiritual master, Narada. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 6:41, Shuchinam Srimatam Gehe Yoga Brashto Vijayate. One who falls down from the process of bhakti yoga is again offered the opulence of the demigods, and after enjoying such material opulence, he is given a chance to take birth in a noble family of a pure Brahmana, or in a rich family, to be given the chance to revive his Krishna consciousness. This actually happened in the life of Priyavrata. He is a most glorious example of this truth. In due course of time, he no longer wanted to enjoy his material opulences and his wife, kingdom, and sons. Instead, he wanted to renounce them all. Therefore, after having described the material opulences of Maharaja Priyavrata, Shukadeva Goswami in this verse describes his tendency for renunciation. The words Devarshi Charananusayana indicate that Maharaj Priyavrata, having fully surrendered to the great sage Devarshi Narada, was strictly following all the devotional processes and regulated principles under his direction. In regard to strictly following the regulated principles, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti says, Dandabat pranamas tan anupatita. By immediately offering obeisances, dandabat, under the spiritual master, and by strictly following his directions, the student becomes advanced. Maharaj Priyavrata was doing all these things regularly. As long as one is in the material world, he has to be under the influence of the modes of material nature, guna visarga. It is not that Maharaj Priyavrata was freed from material influence because he possessed all material opulences. In this material world, both the very poor man and the very rich man are under material influences, for both wealth and poverty are creations of the modes of material nature. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 3:27, Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha. According to the modes of material nature we acquire, the material nature gives us facility for material enjoyment. Text 37. The king thus began criticizing himself. Alas, how condemned I have become because of my sense gratification. I have now fallen into material enjoyment, which is exactly like a covered well. I have had enough. I am not going to enjoy any more. Just see how I've become like a dancing monkey in the hands of my wife. Because of this, I am condemned. Purport. How condemned is the advancement of material knowledge? How condemned is the advancement of material knowledge can be understood from the behavior of Maharaj Priyavrata. He performed such wonderful acts as creating another sun, which shined during the night, and creating a chariot so great that its wheels formed vast oceans. These activities are so great that modern scientists cannot even imagine how such things can be done. Maharaj Priyavrata acted very wonderfully in the material field of activities, but because he was dealing in sense gratification, ruling his kingdom and dancing to the indications of his beautiful wife, he personally condemned himself. When we think about this example of Maharaj Priyavrata, we can just consider how degraded is the modern civilization of materialistic advancement. Modern so-called scientists and other materialists are very satisfied because they can construct great bridges, roads, and machines. But such activities are nothing comparable to those of Maharaj Priyavrata. If Maharaj Priyavrata could condemn himself in spite of his wonderful activities, how condemned we are in our so-called advancement of material civilization. We can conclude that such advancement has nothing to do with the problems of the living entity entangled within this material world. Unfortunately, modern man does not understand his entanglement and how condemned he is, nor does he know what kind of body he is going to have in his next life. From a spiritual point of view, a great kingdom, beautiful wife, and wonderful material activities are all impediments to spiritual advancement. Maharaja Priyavrata had served the great sage Narada sincerely. Therefore, even though he had accepted material opulences, he could not be deviated from his own task. He again became Krishna conscious, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Neha bhikkhavanesho sti pratyavayo navidyate swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. In devotional service, there is no loss or diminution, and even a small service rendered in devotional service is sufficient to save one from the greatest danger. Bhagavad Gita 2:40. Such renunciation as Maharaj Priyavrata's is possible only by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Generally, when people are powerful, or when they have a beautiful wife, a beautiful home, and material popularity, they become more and more entangled. Priyavrata Maharaj, however, having been completely trained by the great sage Narada, revived his Krishna consciousness in spite of all impediments. Text 38. By the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Maharaj Priyavrata awakened to his senses. He divided all his earthly possessions among his obedient sons. He gave up everything, including his wife, with whom he had enjoyed so much sense gratification, and his great and opulent kingdom, and he completely renounced all attachment. His heart, having been cleansed, became a place of pastimes for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus he was able to return to the path of Krishna consciousness, spiritual life, and resume the position he had attained by the grace of the great saint, Narada. Purport. As enunciated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Shikshastaka, Cheto Darpanam Arjanam Baba Maha Davagni Nivarpanam. As soon as one's heart is cleansed, the blazing fire of material existence is immediately extinguished. Our hearts are meant for the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This means that one should be fully Krishna conscious, thinking of Krishna, as he himself advises. Man mana mavabad bhakto madjaji mam manam namaskuru. This should be our only business, I repeat. This should be our only business. I'm preaching to the choir because you guys, most of you are here every night, so you already got it. One whose heart is not clean cannot think of the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Lord. But if one can once again place the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his heart, he very easily becomes qualified to renounce material attachment. Mayavadi philosophers, yogis, and jnanis try to give up this material world simply by saying, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. This world is false. There is no use to it. Let us take to Brahman. Such theoretical knowledge will not help us. If we believe that Brahman is the real truth, we have to place within our hearts the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, as Maharaj Ambarish did. Savai mana Krishna padada vindayo. One has to fix the lotus feet of the Lord within his heart. Then he gets the strength to be freed from material entanglement. Maharaj Priyavrata was able to give up his opulent kingdom And he also gave up the association of his beautiful wife, as if she were a dead body. However beautiful one's wife, and however attractive her bodily features, one is no longer interested in her when her body is dead. We praise a beautiful woman for her body, but that same body, when bereft of a spirit soul, is no longer interesting to any lusty man. Maharaja Priyavrata was so strong by the grace of the Lord that even though his beautiful wife was alive, he could give up her association, exactly like one who was forced to give up the association of a dead wife. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Nadanam, Najanam, Nasundarim, Kavitam va Jagadisha Kamaye, Mama Janmani, Janmanishwade, Bhavatad Bhakti Rahaituki Twayi. Almighty Lord, O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service in my life, birth after birth. For one who desires to advance in spiritual life, attachment to material opulence and attachment to a beautiful wife are two great impediments. Such attachments are condemned even more than suicide. Therefore, anyone desiring to cross beyond material nations must, by the grace of Krishna, be freed from attachment to women and money. When Maharaj Priyavrata became completely free from these attachments, he could again peacefully follow the principles instructed by the great sage, Narada. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. We'll stop here. Lots of nectar in all these verses we just heard. We have a microphone over here that's free, and for the, what do they call that? Open mic periods. The open mic period. Go ahead, you have something.
Okay, we read here, for one who desires to advance in the spiritual life, attachment to material opulence and attachment to beautiful life are two great impediments. Such attachments are condemned even more than suicide. So, what if we have these things, but we don't care about them? Is that possible?
Yeah, this whole pastime where you just read is the classic example of it, and there are many, many others. Ambarish Maharaj, Yudhishthir Maharaj, Parikshit Maharaj. The universe is full of history of great souls, great devotees who took responsibility on Krishna's desire and had all these things to the max. But when it came time to give them up, they gave them up like you give up stool when you pass it. And while they're with them, they kept themselves always engaged in thinking about Krishna. So in whatever condition you're in, there's no Bhaktivinoda Thakur. This is a modern example. Bhaktivinoda Thakur had 10 children, and he was a magistrate in the British government as a Bengali. Those who are from India, they know how difficult that would be. Very difficult, practically impossible. But he was empowered by Krishna. He was sent by Krishna to reestablish and awaken the Krishna consciousness movement, Lord Chaitanya's movement. So even though he had all those material opulences and things, he just kept on Krishna conscious. He wrote 100 books at the same time that he did all those things. And the purports that we just read were making the point. We don't have the potency to do what Priyavrata Maharaj did, because that was in the beginning of Satya Yuga, when lifespans were very, very long, and the material opulence and material energy was so potent that the soul could manifest its original potency in a way externally that was more stunning and more externally wonderful. Now, in the Kali Yuga, the material energy is less potent. So even though the soul in the material body is as potent, actually each one of us, each soul, has the potential to run a universe. But because we're surrounded by material energy that is very, very dense, predominantly made of ignorance in Kali Yuga, therefore, even if one is advanced spiritually, he doesn't show the external symptoms in the same way. But as Srila Prabhupada did, he does something wonderful that no ordinary human being can do by spreading Krishna consciousness single-handedly all over the world. No ordinary person can do that. So the devotee, the pure devotee of the Lord, may have all those material opulences, but he doesn't rely on his own material ability to get things done. Krishna, his mystic power, Krishna does them for him. And that's how Priyavrata Maharaj can do all those wonderful things, because he was empowered directly by Krishna to do them. The reason we have a tendency not to believe or not to have faith in those kinds of descriptions we just heard is because our faith in Krishna, in the personality of Godhead, is weak. We compare the personality to our personality or to anybody we know, and what can we do? So when we hear about these things, we think, this is just mythology, this is impossible. And those kinds of doubts and that lack of trust or that lack of faith, which is now very strong in this material world, that's what all this quarreling is about. Quarreling, fault-finding, backbiting, looking for the faults of others and then spreading them. And all these things just keep us in the muck of material existence. But the pure devotees of the Lord, even though they're in material existence, like we just heard, Priyavrata, in the midst of opulence that we can't even imagine, kept his mind fixed in Krishna. So when it came time, because of his training in the beginning from Narada Muni, he could reawaken his full Krishna consciousness. But Maharaj Yudhishthira and the Pandavas, they kept it right until the end, until Krishna left. Then as soon as Krishna left, they just walked into the land and just dropped one by one. They literally dropped dead as they were just walking. Because their service to do those things was just for Krishna. And when Krishna wasn't there, they had no reason for all those other things. So they didn't die, they just joined him in the next universe. So these things are wonderful to us, but they are the actual laws of nature, the laws of God. Things are going on according to Krishna's desire and his will. And therefore from time to time he comes and actually shows it on the earth. Krishna lifts Govardhan Hill, he marries 16,000 queens, and he does all these things, fights with 100,000 soldiers or even more by himself, and never a hair on his head is touched. Everybody else gets finished, So, because he's God can do anything. Jiva Goswami makes it very clear in his Sandarbhas that unless one actually accepts the principle that God is actually inconceivable, then he can't understand, he can't touch Krishna consciousness, can't touch understanding Krishna. A person, I was talking to Oscar today, he's got this idea about, the cells are like little universes, and this body is like one big universe, and it's a fact. It's a fact. You know, when we hear these stories about Priyavrata, from our position, we think, oh, right. But, you know, an ant seeing us doing what we're doing, they're, whoa, you know, they're thinking this person is inconceivable, something like that. Or maybe they're not thinking anything, but the actual difference is exponentially different. So like that, there are differences from the top of the universe to the bottom. And all these things are going on. And we can't see them, and therefore we don't believe them. We can't see the soul, therefore we don't believe it. But everyone knows consciousness. Even the greatest philosophers and scientists can't figure out consciousness because it doesn't fit into their box of material energy. They can't cut it. And everybody knows we have consciousness. Everybody knows. But they can't accept it because it doesn't fit within their paradigm, you know? There was a very nice article written by Vishaka, my god sister. You know, one of the Vishaka and Yadubar did the movie that we all went to see, the Prabhupada movie, documentary, wonderfully done. And she wrote that she wrote this very nice article about this very thing. How we think that these things are just myth or just stories to give us some idea because of our lack of training and our lack of spiritual acumen, our lack of spiritual attainment, you know, and our lack of faith. Adoshata, tata sadhusanga, chibhajana kriya. In the beginning there must be some degree of faith, that at least curiosity, some faith is there. Let me see this. What if this were true? Let me hear it, at least theoretically, as if it were true. Set aside my, what do they call it in drama? Suspend my disbelief, right? So that I can watch my friends doing a drama, and they're all supposed to be Krishna and Rama and this and that and the other thing. And I know who they are, but I suspend my disbelief to be able to enjoy the drama. So like that, we have the capacity, even if we're not fully faithful, when we hear enough truth, and that truth becomes to weigh on our intelligence and our hearts enough that we can say, oh, this is something else. This is more than I can think. So let me hear, you know, and suspend my disbelief and hear, theoretically, what if this were true? Put my doubt on the shelf, you know, and hear like that. And by doing that, we get Krishna's attention. And by hearing for a long time, as Kapila Dev said to Devahuti, as Kapila Dev said to Devahuti when she said, you know, I can understand I'm not the body, but how I'm the consciousness and how the intelligence and soul and it's all merged together, that's beyond, I can't even touch that. That's beyond me. So what to do? And Kapila Dev, what did he say? He said, yes, it is difficult. Therefore you have to hear from the right source very seriously for a very long time. Yes. And then gradually our subtle body becomes purified, as we heard in these commentaries, these purports of Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Cyberspace.
Cyberspace. Let me see. Maybe it's Rati Manjari.
Yes.
Whoa. Mystic.
Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Tonight we have once again heard about the wonderful character and renunciation of King Priyavrata. Today is also the appearance day of Srivas Pandit, another great devotee and member of the Panchatattva. Would you be so kind as to share some of his pastimes with us?
Well, I got to stop in 3 minutes, so I'm not going to be able to tell very much. But Srivas Pandit is Narada Muni. So this is very interesting because the Panchatattva are on our altar, not on our altar, but in Mayapur, in Laguna Beach, in Slovenia, in Hawaii. There are different places where the Panchatattva are on the altar and we worship them. And three of them are Vishnu Tattva. Lord Chaitanya is Krishna. Nityananda is Lord Balaram. Advaitacharya is Mahavishnu. Gadadhar is Srimati Radharani. Shakti Tattva. So there's three Vishnu Tattva, then the Shakti Tattva, Gadadhar Pandit, and then there's Srivas Thakur, who's Jiva Tattva. And yet, he's on the altar with all, this is normally not done. But because he's attained this status of devotional qualification, therefore he is worshipped along with the rest of the Panchatattva as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You know, so Srivas Thakur is the head of the devotees. Just like Narada Muni, you notice as we read the Bhagavatam, Narada Muni is showing up. He'll keep showing up from time to time, just at the right moment, to say the right thing, to precipitate Krishna's appearance, to speed up the event, or to cause some kind of chaos with the demons or whatever. And so he's very. He had 4 brothers, 3 brothers, 2 brothers. Anyway, there was either 2 or 3 brothers, and they lived in Mayapur. And all the family members had servants, and there were a big family. They were all living in the same house. We don't do this in America so much, but in India sometimes they do. People who were well off. But Srivas Thakur never had a job, and he never did anything to earn money. So one time Lord Chaitanya came to me and he said, Srivas, I notice that you're never doing anything to make money, and that you've got this huge family with, so many family members and servants. And he says, how do you do it? And he went. Lord Chaitanya said, what does that mean? He said, well, if I don't get food in 3 days, I'll just jump in the Ganga and end it all. The meaning was, he was completely dependent on Krishna. And Krishna arranged for him to be able to maintain, and he was the head of the family of all those persons. And he not only maintained all that big family, but he also spread Krishna consciousness like wildfire. Something. It's not nothing. Okay, it took me 4 minutes. And now I got to go. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Rati, for that wonderful question. As usual, you're like ahead of all of us in terms of asking questions. And Oscar, it's nice to have you aboard.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. I know that was a lot to take in. The first time you hear all these people creating suns and all these far out things. But just know, as you were already thinking about, atoms and cells and universes and how it all fits together, this book will put it all together.
Yeah.
You can't put it together with your own mind.
Right.
It's not possible. No one can. But this knowledge is coming down to us from personalities who actually saw these things happening. So we have a history of the universe. It's called Srimad-Bhagavatam. We have the basic philosophy of spiritual life. It's called the Bhagavad Gita. So just plug in. Come and hear with us as much as you like. Get your Bhagavad Gita, read it daily, try to understand. If you got questions, bring them right over here. Okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Priyavrata Maharaj ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol. See you tomorrow, same station, same place, same time. Hare Krishna.